How did you know her?
Were you about 8 weeks pregnant? See, you've been spotting recently. You've had any cramps or nausea?
That's personal.
You've been taking your prenatal vitamins?
Excuse me?
Are you ticketing me for something?
Where are you heading, Abigail?
To go see my older sister, Natalie.
Well, that's strange. It says here that Natalie's at a concert in Dallas, and your navigation is set to a women's health clinic in one of those abortion states.
We have the right to travel.
Not anymore. Step out of the car.
Please, officer.
Both of you out now. You, sir, are under arrest for crossing state lines to obtain an abortion for a minor under your care. And you, young lady, well, you're under arrest for evading motherhood.
What's going on, everybody? I'm a former flock safety field tech. Here on the scene of the very first license plate reader I installed as a field tech for flock safety. You might be asking yourself, why am I standing in front of this camera? I posted a video recently, kind of just going over the process of how we installed these things, and the video blew up. It got over 1 million views on TikTok. I wasn't expecting it. I was just expecting to educate my followers. It ended up reaching a whole lot of people. 1.3 million on TikTok, 300,000 on Instagram. I got over 10,000 new followers between platforms. It's insane. I never had a social media account with over 1,000 followers. Besides the point, I wanted to clarify a couple things. You want an 8mm, a 13mm, and a T25 or a T30 Torx bit. It kind of depends on who put the camera together. We're gonna theoretically take one of these cameras down. What you would want to do is start by taking down the camera itself, which is this unit up here. That's the 8mm or 5/16 in Freedom units. You want to get that camera taken down. You want to cut the cable as fast as possible. The solar panel itself is held on by 8 set screws. Okay, to remove the solar panel, you have to loosen 4 of those set screws. Now that's 13mm. When you cut the cable, they're gonna get a notification that you've been tampering with the camera. What you wanna do is get this camera off the pole as soon as possible and start making your way back to your vehicle. You wanna get back to your car, and as you're walking towards the car, take that Torx bit on that same impactor drill, whatever you were using, put that T25 or T30 Torx bit on, and as you're leaving the scene, start unscrewing the camera housing. So by the time you get to your car, you can pull the battery back up out and it can no longer track your location. The moment you cut that cable, they're gonna dispatch police to your location. So you wanna flee the scene quickly, and as you're fleeing the scene, start taking that camera apart so you can get that battery backup out. Don't throw the battery backup out because they could be used for tons of things. I've heard of people using them for remote controlled cars, remote controlled planes, and different hobbies, even using them as a makeshift, power source for lights in their work vans. The solar panels you can get creative with. You can put them on your RV, you could put them on your work van, you could put them on your trailers, anything. You can use them to generate power to, charge your Milwaukee tools. You can get creative with the solar panels. A couple things to clarify about the pole. This one is not mounted legally. Garrett Langley, the CEO of the company, said it himself. They're kind of going based on brute force. They're just trying to install as many of these as possible, as fast as possible. And this is a good example. This is not safe. Not only is it not safe, it's not stable. I barely touched it, and look how much the thing is swaying. Okay, if a car hits this, it can decapitate a driver. The pole can be inserted through the vehicle. It's completely unsafe. What should be here should be a concrete slab, and this should be mounted to the slab using a breakaway plate so that if a car does hit it, the camera will just fall over and break away. It won't provide any resistance. Nothing can penetrate the vehicle and decapitate drivers and make a bloody scene. Now, why are they trying to brute force everything? They're brute forcing as many of these cameras, installing as many of these cameras as they humanly possibly can, because they're trying to IPO. What does that mean? They're trying to sell the company or become public. They want shareholders. Right now, if they get sued, Garrett Langley could be held responsible, but through the use of, LLCs and the way the business is structured, the business itself would have to pay for the lawsuit, and it would be detrimental to the company. They would probably foreclose or bankrupt. I mean, they would be done as a company if they were sued now. But if they get sued once they have shareholders after they IPO, any lawsuits, any big payments are paid out through shareholder, through shareholder profits. The company wouldn't necessarily be damaged by themselves. It would be detrimental if they were sued now. But the more cameras they have on paper, the more money they could sue for. So what they're doing is, like I said, they have private customers. There's a mosque, and the mosque is leasing this camera. Okay, the way it works is they pay for a year lease, and Flock maintains the camera. Anything that goes wrong with it, whatever, they maintain it. But you never own it. You just have a login. You have access. You can view what the camera records. Any plates that it picks up, anything that passes by and is recorded by the camera, you have access to. You have your own login. Now, this login, this access between private institutions can be shared. For instance, police departments lease a lot of flock cameras. But between municipalities, they don't technically have a login. They only can log into the cameras that they lease, right? So let's say Skokie Police Department wants to access cameras in Morton Grove. They'd have to make a phone call and get those videos sent over. But what they do is they share access. So Skokie can share access with Morton Grove, and they could just log into each other's cameras. And this is done on a worldwide, throughout the whole United States, every municipality. It's not just governments that are local to each other or police departments that are local to each other. And a lot of these private clients, like this mosque, for instance, they'll lease this camera and get it pulled up, but they have no idea that they are sharing accessibility to this camera with their local police department. So they purchased this as a lease, as a private business, as a mosque, so they could have their own login information, so they could protect their parking lot, see who's coming in and out, and if anything happens, they can obviously track the perpetrator, at least in this direction, because there's not one pointing in that direction. So they could log in to the camera, see who passed by, and pull up that information. But the local police department can also do the same thing through confusing language. When these private customers lease these cameras, they have no idea that it automatically opts into sharing accessibility with police departments. So anyone that has a private business or public business can get one of these cameras installed. All you need, let's say you own a mechanic shop, you have a physical location in a parking lot, you can get one of these pulled up. If you work at a police department, you guys have a budget for security, for surveillance, whatever the hell you want to call it, you can get these, put up in your city through a lease for the police department. Any private or public business can get a flock camera through a lease.
Did you know police are getting caught using surveillance tech like flock to track people for personal reasons? If you're in court and the ALPR data is being used against you, here's how you fight back. In Sandy Springs, an officer was fired for using city cameras to test private algorithms. When cops watch the watchers without guardrails, your privacy is the first thing to go. First, your lawyer needs to subpoena the audit logs. Every single search of your license plate leaves a digital footprint. If the officer didn't have a specific documented case number or a legitimate law enforcement purpose to search you, that access will be illegal. Second, file a motion to suppress. If the data was gathered through mission creep or unauthorized use, you can argue it violates the Fourth Amendment. If the search was bad, any evidence they found after, like a trunk search, could be thrown out as fruit of the poisonous tree. Finally, challenge the data's integrity. If the officers are using it for private beta testing, it proves the system lacks oversight. If they can't prove the data was handled properly, it shouldn't be in court. Don't let the tech-savvy overreach win. Know your right and follow for more ways to fight back.
Question. At any point in the last 25 years, have you ever voted for more surveillance? I know I haven't. Yet, all around the country, and especially here in the South Coast, more and more of these deflock cameras and hundreds of other cameras continue to be put up. And where are these being transmitted to? Just to the police department? I don't think so. It's more nefarious than that. Yet I know that you can't believe in that there are nefarious forces at hand every single moment of our day. But look into deflock and you will spot these. Get these things out of here. Did you vote for this?
Hey, what's up, America? This is very disturbing, and you need to know this. So 7 top tech companies have agreed to work with the Pentagon on secret data. Now, these companies I'm about to mention have agreed to work with the Pentagon to cover surveillance in the United States and autonomous weapons of war. Yes, that's correct. Drones and other equipment that are autonomous that will be used to kill people. As well as that surveillance state update you always thought was coming? Here it is. What they're working on is considered highly classified, but like I said, we do know it's for weapon systems and also surveillance of the American people. The 7 tech companies that have agreed to work with the United States government to surveil the people and make autonomous weapons are OpenAI, the makers of ChatGPT, SpaceX with Elon Musk, Google, they're going to be helping with surveillance, Microsoft, they're going to be watching your every move and sending that to databases apparently, NVIDIA, yes, NVIDIA, Amazon Web Services will also be helping the Pentagon create databases on people from what I understand, and a company called Reflection AI. Also, Anthropic will be joining, and don't forget Palantir, which already made agreements quite some time ago. The story says, quote, the United States Department of Defense, or Department of War, however you classify it, announced agreements with these companies to deploy their advanced AI capabilities on classified networks. And this involves secret and top secret environments you'll never know. This allows for broader military and government use on data synthesis, situational awareness, and decision-making in operations. That's the military side. My bad, apparently Anthropic is not involved, favoring these other companies because of a dispute with Anthropic. But they may join later. Sorry, I didn't mean to fuck you over there. So here's the worst part. These selected companies have agreed to terms enabling, quote, any lawful operational use by the Pentagon on American mass surveillance or weapon systems and technology. And since you know what flock cameras are doing, you know what Palantir is doing, this right here is the very beginning of a constant surveillance state. Welcome to literal hell.
A new leader will be elected. They'll flip the switch, say that because of the crisis, because of the dangers that we face in the world, we need more authority, we need more power, and there will be nothing the people can do at that point to oppose it.
This new law that I signed today will allow surveillance of all communications used by terrorists, including emails, the internet, and cell phones.
We're already in the system.
They won't take us very seriously, and they will not actually try to stop us till it's too late.
I think mass surveillance is coming to the United States relatively soon. If you're wondering what that means, it means the government could eventually know where you go, what you do, and who you interact with. Which is so dangerous because the more information a government has on its citizens, the more impossible it becomes for regular people to challenge those at the top. So why do I think we're headed in that direction? Well, because I think COVID was the test run that proved how willing people were to trade freedom for security. Like in the name of public safety, governments were able to impose restrictions that most people would have considered to be impossible just a few years earlier. Like practically overnight, travel was limited, businesses were shut down, people were locked in homes, and anyone who even questioned any of this faced very real social consequences. And all of this was because of a pandemic that had a mortality rate well under 0.1% for people my age. Which means that if a government ever wants to expand surveillance, which they obviously would, all they'd have to do is convince people that crime, terrorism, or something else is serious enough that giving up your privacy and freedom is a worthwhile trade-off. And I think this is very probable, because as we've already seen, there are plenty of adults willing to make that trade based off short-term fear and emotion as opposed to any sort of logical argument.
It turns out billionaires are so out of touch that they now think mass surveillance is a business. On stage, Larry Ellison publicly said, quote, citizens will be on their best behavior because we are constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. He also said drones should replace police cars in high-speed chases. And Ellison has been embedded in this for years. After 9/11, Ellison publicly called for national ID cards with everyone's photograph and thumbprint, and he offered Oracle software to build it for free. And in 2022, Oracle was sued for running what the lawsuit called a worldwide surveillance machine with files on roughly 5 million people. And since 2021, Ellison has poured more than $300 million into a think tank that shapes UK government policy. Within 48 hours of one of its reports, the UK government announced plans for national digital ID. And in December, an Oracle-led group signed the deal to take over TikTok's US operations, overseeing the algorithm and data for almost 200 million Americans. And Ellison's family now controls a major chunk of American media So the same man who is openly fantasizing about constant surveillance is now sitting on big media, algorithms, and national security. But Ellison's news has zero power if no one watches it, and if we know what's going on, it's harder for them to get away with anything. Which is why it is so important to stay aware of who you fund and put your attention towards. You can use the Conscious app to see who owns your favorite companies and how ethical they really are.
So right now, they want everyone focused on the public debate about AI. They want you to focus on whether AI is going to take your job. They want you to focus on whether students should use ChatGPT, or whether AI should be able to make art, or whether it's going to surpass human intelligence. Those are not conversations about the infrastructure we're building to make the AI possible in the first place. They want the public conversation to be heavily centered around AI itself, so that you do not talk about the infrastructure, about our privacy, about governance, and about our constitutional right to privacy. So we need to have a conversation about data centers. They are not building data centers for AI. They actually love that we're arguing about AI right now, because it distracts from the fact that the data centers is them building the infrastructure that's required to establish and maintain a digital surveillance state. I'm talking about a society where nearly everything you do leaves a digital footprint that can be collected by the government, stored by the government, analyzed, and used against you. They already know where you drive, flock cameras. They want to know who you associate with, what you buy, what you search, what you post online, what your face looks like, how you move through your own city. Hello, is that not terrifying? And history's low-key repeating itself. Take the internet, for example. People just think that that just appeared out of nowhere. No, it didn't. It started as the ARPANET, which was a research network that was funded by the Department of Defense during the Cold War. The military wanted a communication network that could continue functioning, even if parts of it were damaged or destroyed. And then later, it became the internet that we know, because universities expanded that technology, private companies commercialized it, and that is how we got the internet that we know today after decades of evolution. Okay, GPS as well. Today we use it to avoid traffic, track our Ubers, find a nearby coffee joint. That's not why it was built. GPS was originally developed by the United States military so that troops, aircraft, ships, weapon systems could determine their exact position anywhere on Earth. For years, civilians either couldn't use it or only had access to a deliberately less accurate version of the signal. Eventually, high accurate GPS became available to pretty much everyone by the 2000s, and now billions of people depend on it every single day. I mean, the Patriot Act didn't completely disappear after 9/11, even though that's what it was for. TSA didn't disappear after 9/11, even though that's what it's for. My point is that history shows security infrastructure outlasts the crisis that created it. Presidents come and go, Congress changes every election cycle, political parties rise and fall, but the infrastructure stays. Once it's built, every future administration inherits it. Every future Congress inherits it. Every future agency inherits it. So back to the conversation of AI and data centers. I completely understand why people are worried about the environmental impact. That is, I feel the vast majority of the conversations I've heard. I've even spoken on it. Data centers use an enormous amount of electricity, enormous amounts of water. Those conversations absolutely matter. But what kind of infrastructure are we actually building? Let's think outside the box. Because once this level of computing exists, it doesn't just make better chatbots. It makes entirely new forms of large-scale data analysis, automation, and surveillance technology possible too. Let me make my case. Here's why I think data centers are for surveillance. So we've been being surveilled for years, right? The government, you can't do anything quietly now. What's missing from all of that though? Processing power. Collecting data has never been the hard part. We've been collecting ridiculous amounts of information for years. The hard part is analyzing billions of license plate scans, faces, financial transactions, security camera feeds, phone locations, online activity, personal connections, just fast enough to actually use all of it. That's where AI comes in. AI doesn't just generate pictures and answer your homework questions, okay? It can recognize patterns, connect separate databases, identify faces, map relationships between people, analyze behavior, automate decisions on a scale that no human workforce could ever match. But none of that happens without an enormous amount of computing power, and that's exactly why they need the data centers to create a surveillance state successfully, bigger than what we have already. And we don't have to imagine whether surveillance systems can be abused, because we've already seen it happen. We've seen documented cases. There was a case in my city where an LMPD police officer used a flock camera to stalk his ex-girlfriend, I think over 300 times. There's reports of stalking, misuse of sensitive databases, innocent people being stopped or investigated because of incorrect or outdated information. The technology itself isn't inherently corrupt, but it's operated by human beings, managed by institutions, and it's vulnerable to the same corruption, the same negligence, the same bias, and the same abuse that every institution is vulnerable to. And that's why I feel like this is ultimately a constitutional conversation, because your Fourth Amendment right is to protect you from unlawful searches and seizures. It wasn't written for criminals. It was written to protect ordinary citizens from unlimited government power. Privacy is not just about hiding wrongdoing. It's about preserving the balance of power between the government and the people. But when you work surveillance networks into that power balance, it's uneven. And when I bring this up, someone's like, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, then why are you worried? Outside of the fact that I'm pushing for a revolution on social media and I can now be very easily tracked, that's actually not my concern. My concern is corruption, my concern is abuse, and my concern is mistakes. Because technology becoming more advanced doesn't magically make the people controlling it more ethical. I actually think it's very naive to not be concerned about something like this. Actually, perfect time to quote Edward Snowden. He said that arguing that you don't care about privacy because you have nothing to hide is like saying you don't care about free speech because you have nothing to say. Rights exist because power can be abused. We're not asking the same constitutional questions that our founding fathers faced, right? We're asking whether constitutional protections written in the 18th century are being interpreted strongly enough for the 21st century technology we're experiencing. Short answer, it's not. Conversations about constitutional limits should be happening right now while the infrastructure is being built, not after it becomes impossible to imagine society without data centers. Okay? That's terrifying. So now a lot of people are going to wonder, okay, well, what do you think is going to happen now? So surveillance changes behavior. Let's start there. It's a little bit of psychology for right now. It's actually one of the most well-established findings in psychology. People behave differently when they believe that they're being watched. They censor themselves. They become less willing to express unpopular opinions. They become less willing to attend protests or organize politically. It actually even affects freedom of association, which is just your freedom to choose who you spend your time with, what organizations you join, what meetings you attend, and what causes you to publicly support something. If people begin worrying that every friendship, every political group, every rally, protest, every meeting that they're photographed at could be part of a permanent digital record, people naturally become more cautious, even if they've done nothing illegal, right? Freedom isn't just about what you're allowed to say. It's about whether you feel comfortable saying it or standing next to someone who's saying it. And like I said earlier, it's still ran by humans. And humans are corrupt, and it gives them more powerful tools. So then you'll see an officer stalking an ex, or an employee selling private information, or an agency quietly expanding how the data gets used, or a corrupt politician targeting journalists, protesters, political opponents, marginalized communities, or maybe an incorrect database entry that causes an innocent person to become the focus of an investigation. Human error and abuse already exist. Technology just makes these consequences much larger. So right now, they want everyone focused on the public debate about AI. They want you to focus on whether AI is going to take your job. They want you to focus on whether students should use ChatGPT, or whether AI should be able to make art, or whether it's going to surpass human intelligence. Those are not conversations about the infrastructure we're building to make the AI possible in the first place. They want the public conversation to be heavily centered around AI itself, so that you do not talk about the infrastructure, about our privacy, about governance, and about our constitutional right to privacy.
One nation under surveillance, easily divided, with no liberty and justice for none.
A flock camera that scans license plates, and license plates, of course, are registered to somebody who owns the car, and then we know who that person is so that we can track that person everywhere. And a lot of people are like, oh, I don't see the big deal. It helps fight crime. And if you're not doing anything wrong, you shouldn't be worried about it. What this lawsuit is about, this class action cases in California, that's saying you guys are going way too far with it and you're violating our rights. This data is being shared with other law enforcement agencies and federal agencies, which are out-of-state agencies. And it's like, wow, what's the big deal? Well, you're being tracked everywhere.
That's what it is. 2 words, Nick: mass surveillance.
Mass surveillance.
You go to church every Sunday, or you go to a synagogue, or you go to a mosque, and that's your religious preference. Your religious preference is none of the government's business. Your political events, Nick, you're an independent and you want to go to a rally for the Republicans, and then you're not decided, so you want to go to a rally for the Democrats. Well, is this guy suspicious? Why is he going to these different political events? I think that's information that people ultimately, if you sit down and explain it to them, they're not going to like it. And I think that's what this suit is saying.
Yep. Flock, along with everything else, is redefining privacy, where we are chipping away at what privacy is. This data is supposed to be taken, stored, and deleted, and it's not.
Hi, I'm a criminal defense attorney, and I don't know who needs to hear this, but flock cameras are bad. Oh, but they help the police solve crimes. And that might be true, but to the detriment of all of our privacy rights. These are mass surveillance tools being used and misused and abused by the government to create a record of you and everywhere you go and everything that you do. But for those who live in Georgia, be extra careful because Flock is headquartered here, and so we have the most Flock cameras and the least regulation of those Flock cameras out of any state in this country. And to those who support these cameras because they say that they help law enforcement who already have a whole lot of tools at their disposal, I give you this. Benjamin Franklin once famously said, "Those who give up their essential liberties in order to purchase temporary safety deserve neither."
Well, we're here. Are you listening, MAGA? This is for you as well. We're here. We're in a big brother dystopia. Officially, the Trump administration just signed the contracts to use technology to track you and track me with facial recognition, iris recognition. And it's software that can also access our iPhones, our smartphones, and track our locations. And it's also software that plugs into our social media to monitor what we're doing, what we're saying, and also track our locations. And right now, the Trump administration is using the excuse that they're going after Antifa, meaning protesters out protesting ICE. But make no mistake, MAGA, this is all of us. This is tracking you one day. This is tracking you one day. This is so invasive and in violation of our rights. I can't even see straight. I don't care if you're out protesting ICE or not. Every single American should be afraid. And the cost is north of $1.4 billion a month of your tax dollars and my tax dollars to go track where some person wearing a frog costume is located, to see who's standing next to them by reading their irises, facial recognition, by accessing their tracking devices on their smartphones and through their social media. I have not dug in deep enough to see if our favorite plantier, Peter Thiel's company, is behind this. The Pandora's box has been opened and it cannot be closed.
You haven't done anything wrong. What do you got to be worried about? If I haven't done anything wrong, you got no business looking at me. And if you can't prove that I've done something wrong, you got no business looking at me. The founders made that argument. They made the argument that it would be better for some crimes to go unsolved than for everybody to have the state in their business, surveilling them whenever they want, however they want, without limitations. The state is taking control in a new way, and it is something that conservatives and liberals alike should be deeply alarmed by and ready to fight.
A data center the size of a U.S. city just got approved in Utah. 40,000 acres, about 62 square miles, 3 times bigger than Manhattan, bigger than all of Disney World, about the size of Washington, D.C. And to understand how insane this is, one of the biggest known data centers currently in America is only around 2,000 acres. So this new one would be 23 times that. This is a private digital metropolis. Now here's what I don't buy. This is not being built so your vacation photos can sit in the cloud, or so ChatGPT can tell you how much garlic goes in your pasta sauce. We already have capacity for that. This is something different. Data centers at this scale are not just storage. They're prediction machines designed to track your every search, every scroll, every pause, every grocery order, every voice command. Every time you hover, hesitate, buy, don't buy, you feed enough of that info to machines and they don't just know your consumer behavior, they know what you're going to do next. If a company knows the exact moment you're vulnerable, they know the exact moment to hit you with the product, the price, the notification, the video, the ad. People will say, all right, that sounds crazy. Really? Years ago, people said it sounded crazy that an intelligence agency could collect communications data at massive scale. Then the documents came out. It was not fiction, it was the NSA's standard operating procedure. That was step 1, collect the signals. This looks like step 2, build machines big enough to read and analyze every digital signal known to man. And it's not good. The law is not caught up to this. At this scale, the question should not be whether you agreed to this data collection by downloading an app. The question should be whether these systems should be able to have access to all of your digital behavior all of the time, and then to sell access to it to the highest bidder. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe a 62 square mile computer campus really is about faster emails and better ChatGPT answers. But ask yourself this, why would they need a city-sized machine to do the things they can already do? There's a lot of money in surveilling every single thing you do every minute of the day using AI. I'm just afraid of what comes next.
We talked to the Flock guy, and he's like, you know what, I felt very unsafe. I said, sir, did you feel unsafe because we were filming you? And he's like, yes. I'm like,
oh,
like, come on now.
Shoes on the other foot now, huh, partner?
Flock Safety is a license plate reader camera system that your city council or your local sheriff votes in, and the argument is, hey, it helps us track violent criminals. The polls I put on Instagram and YouTube were both at about 90% no, I don't want Flock in my city. The second thing we were gonna do is put them under surveillance. Went to their first headquarters, no signage on the building, completely anonymous. We went to their drone headquarters. It's a construction company is what the front looks like. And so we look around this entire huge building, nothing says Flock. So anyways, we started filming their employees, and when they would pull up in their car, and I'd be like, hey sir, just want to let you know, you're under surveillance, but don't worry, it's for your safety. And they were all spooked and they get away, and I was like running with their car with the camera, and then another employee comes up and I'm like, hey sir, do you work for Flock? He's like, Flock, never heard of it, what's that? I'm actually for this construction company. Then the police come in, they box our car in from leaving the parking lot. I think they just did a software update where now it can listen to audio. And so once these cameras are in, just like with your phone, there's an automatic update that no one voted for, and 3 or 4 city council members approved. Now boom, now it's audio, now it's facial.
We know that it is going to be ultimate 24/7 surveillance of you and me from every waking moment and every sleeping moment that we have. They'll finally be able to tell when you flip your light switch on at home, when you open your garage door and you leave your house. All of this is digital surveillance that will be enabled through having these data centers. And I have this consulting background in technology, so I understand clearly how all of these pieces map together. And so that is something that has really concerned me from day one, which is why I am so much on this bandwagon about ensuring that we get privacy protections from data centers. So I went to one of the meetings in Mount Orab and I had my constitution and I was like, are you gonna promise me that you are not gonna violate my 4th Amendment? And they're like, so, I mean, you know, We have to put privacy protections in place for when these data centers do go live.
They're recording us everywhere we're going, and most people have no idea how deep this shit goes. And I'm not just talking about police body cameras, and I know a lot of people have already caught on to flock cameras. But now, cities like Denver have switched to installing Axon license plate readers that log where your car was and when. Cities from Arizona to New York and Oregon are adopting or testing these systems so that every day when you get in your car to drive to fucking work, they know. And Axon doesn't just sell one camera. They sell an entire surveillance ecosystem. License plate readers, body cameras, and AI software that pulls all those feeds together. Axon also has a $370 million contract to supply technology to ICE and DHS, and local plate data can be shared with immigration agencies too. And just in case all that shit wasn't invasive enough, they're also testing facial recognition body cameras. This shit is not just a camera on a pole. It is an entire ecosystem that's designed to watch, track, and store everywhere all of us are going, all the fucking time. Find out what the fuck your city is buying and demand answers before it's too late.
What I'm about to say could impact the rest of your life. A former Palantir executive blew the whistle yesterday, and what he said was honestly terrifying. He said, and I quote, "It is factually correct that Palantir intends to take over the U.S. government while heavily funding the effort. Many of my ex-colleagues are now installed inside the U.S. government. Our nation is an occupied nation. We basically have a terrorist entity deeply embedding itself into the U.S. government." Every U.S. citizen is now being surveilled by this one company that creates software that does only two things: mass surveillance and mass slaughter. Yes, I can prove it. Palantir is the largest surveillance weapons and software company on the planet, netting just under $400 billion, and it was founded in 2004 by Alex Karp and Peter Thiel. But as soon as this company was founded, it was dumped into by the CIA, millions of dollars. Now, this is a massive red flag because typically when governments do mass surveillance on citizens, they need to do large court hearings, oversight, have public records of this. But if it's a private company partnering with the government behind closed doors, they don't have to do any of that. They can just secretly hush, collect all the data, do whatever they want, and they can label it as a trade secret. This is exactly why hundreds of billions of dollars are funneled into private security companies. It's not just for war, it's for control. Now, what does this $100 billion software actually look like and do? Well, this is it right here. This is a real picture of their software, Gotham, which is used to aggregate large surveillance lists to create kill lists, literally to gather data and create lists of people to kill. They also have a software called Mosaic, which is designed to scrape all of the information possible off of people from social media and the internet to gather data to then also what? What do you think? Go kill them. Their software was also used to create death robots that were used in the war in Israel to instantly kill people. Does this sound like a sci-fi movie, or is this one of the most evil and devious companies ever created? It's founders like this that make me realize how vital it is to have conscious, heart-led founders in society today. It's exactly why I made it my mission to help more conscious creators, founders scale their businesses.
Now they're openly telling you who's going to pay for these AI surveillance centers, because that's exactly what they are. Here's Larry Fink sitting with the governor of Texas telling us all that you're going to pay for it. Your savings account is going to pay for it. Your pension funds, insurance companies, they're going to pay for the AI data. Because if we don't, then China's going to get to us first. Here's one of the world's predator elite in the predator elite class, who he himself isn't going to pay for it. It's going to be you. And sadly, millions of Americans are openly cheering for the demise of our own nation right out in the open.
Americans to think about growing with the United States. We will have far than enough money to invest in this infrastructure. But as the governor was talking about, the need for electrons is growing every day. Some of these, if we're going to be the leader in technology, which we are, if we are going to be the leader in AI, which we presently are, it's just going to require trillions of dollars of investments. And if we don't invest in it, China will be the global leader in this. And so to me, it's not whether, this is a must. And if you think about how that translates, it translates into a more dynamic economy. We need the United States economy to grow at over 2%. We need the U.S. economy to grow at 3%, especially with the growing deficits the federal government has. And so much of this money, not just the project, is going to be coming from the private sector, from savings accounts, from pension accounts, from insurance companies, and on and on and on. The whole world is in need of improving the infrastructure.
Are you awake yet?